Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, licensed attorney, crisis strategist, and host of The Crisis Files. In each case file, we explore hot topics with trailblazing leaders. Steve Grove is CEO and president of the Minnesota Star Tribune. His past life includes state government, journalism, and trailblazing work in Silicon Valley. After living and working on both coasts of the United States, he returned to new ground in his home state with some unexpected twists. Steve is here for the case file I call Going Local. Steve, on top of everything you're doing, you're a first-time author. We'll get to that shortly. First, I want to dig into this chasm happening right now in journalism. Some brands are going big on infotainment, others quite the opposite. Why the spread?
Well, I think there's a lot of news fatigue out there. I think I would admit even to myself that I sometimes take a break from the news because it's just coming at you every day. And I think people don't want to feel like they're being lectured to in the news. And also there's a declining trust in media. So I think brands are trying to figure out where they fit on that spectrum. We try to do both as a generalized local publication for the state. We don't want to just be the broccoli. We want to be interesting, great new content too. We just launched last week a lake rater that rates every lake in the entire state for you to get a sense of where the fishiest or the foulest lakes might be.
I love it.
But I think in terms of brands and broader business strategies, where you don't want to get caught is in this kind of squishy middle where you don't stand for something very specific. What you're seeing happen in the market right now is a lot of really hyper-specific trade publications or very niche kind of interest-based publications doing really well. Think of like, special tech blogs or special lifestyle blogs or even podcasts like this one. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have these kind of broad national Wall Street Journal, New York Times, sort of major pillar players that can sort of purport to be the true paper of record. And then in the middle of that is this kind of squishy middle. And we are worried at the Star Tribune of being stuck in that middle of like, well, what are you really trying to get after? Are you just about a certain particular place? How do you fit on a person's media diet? And so I think you're seeing a lot of experimentation right now as people try to follow the interests of subscribers. And in our case, people to actually pay for the news, which is a whole nother challenge. But, I don't think you have to choose between either, but you've got to know who your audience is at all times. And if there's more than one audience, know how you're going to cater to them.
Well, it seems like now more than ever, we also have to look at multiple sources. I mean, not just because I'm an ex-TV reporter, I'm a consumer of news, business news, trade publications, as well as just mainstream, whatever it is, local and national. Publications, podcasts, TV, radio, all those things. It can get a little dizzying. But one of the things that seems to be a constant, Steve, is trust has really become an issue.
Yeah.
So how has your team been dealing with that head on?
Yeah, I mean, trust is an issue across almost every established institution in America today. This is a uniquely American problem, actually. You don't see it in other countries in the same scale across military, the government, media, big tech. Religion, falling trust in our institutions is a huge challenge in our society today. And in media, we feel it every day. Our whole brand is built on trust. People have to believe what they see in the Minnesota Star Tribune. And so we take it pretty seriously. And at the same time, I think people trust things that feel authentic to them. And oftentimes legacy media organizations feel a little bit less authentic. They feel more ivory tower. They feel a little bit separated from the community. So we're trying to move away from this kind of paper of record kind of haughty thing into something that's a bit more of the streets, of the people, a bit more digital, a bit more connected. We don't want to cede this kind of relationship with our readers to the social media platforms because I think you trust what you know when you trust the people that you know. An example of that for us is we've really moved away from kind of the editorial board voice of the Minnesota Star Tribune, this kind of unsigned editorial where you don't know, this is just like the voice of God coming at you.
Who said that? Why did they say that?
Right. And we're moving into voices. We have a whole effort on Strib Voices, which is our new reimagined opinion brand, which brings a lot more commentary and personality into our publication. We want you to know the reporters in the same way that you know them on social media through our own platform so that you trust them because, oh yeah, I know Evan Ramstead or Laura Yuen or whoever it might be, and that helps grow trust. But I think sometimes media organizations get so obsessed with trust that they fail to innovate. And so one of the things that I've noticed about coming to the Minnesota Star Tribune, because I didn't spend my career in journalism, I was mainly in tech for most of my career, is that there's this kind of concern about not doing anything unless it's perfectly polished. Because if you get it wrong, one fact can kind of denigrate a brand. And that's important for sure when it comes to the journalism. But when you try to become a modern digital media company, you got to be throwing a lot of ideas of content vehicles and podcast series and video attempts that are going to fail or succeed in various levels of success and experimentation, but it has to be part of the metabolism of an organization like ours. So you got to be focused on trust, but just as important, you got to be focused on experimentation, because that's how the digital media world works. And I think for the Strib, a 157-year-old newspaper, that hasn't been a part of our culture as much until recently.
Right. And I love that you said you have to be open to trying and also open to failing, because you're not going to succeed at everything.
Yeah.
It's also where trust is important, because when you do fail, your viewers, readers, they will believe what's next. And they'll say, okay, it didn't go their way, but it doesn't mean we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, you got to create that space.
And speaking of digital, you are a YouTube trailblazer. I don't think a lot of people know this about your past. It's a really fun part of your story.
Yeah.
The early years of YouTube, you were there.
It was a kind of crazy. I think I was employee number 85 at YouTube.
It's amazing.
Crazy days. Google had just acquired the company. There'd been a moment in rural Virginia where a political candidate named George Allen had been captured on YouTube using a racial slur that had gone viral and had kind of uncovered a deeper racist sensibility that this candidate, George Allen, had. And he lost a Senate race. It was kind of the first YouTube politics moment. And so suddenly YouTube's trying to figure out, well, how do we think about politics? We're a site that's really just created for funny cat videos and music, right? So how do you think about politics? So I came on board early to help them figure out news and politics content. We had really no idea what we were doing, but pretty quickly found ourselves in some highfalutin places just because the candidates saw the power and the virality of it. So we were interviewing Barack Obama in the White House and doing presidential debates where YouTube users would ask questions on camera. We had a snowman ask Mitt Romney about climate change, for example. It was just a really wildly experimental time, an almost utopic period of the internet where everything seemed like upside. And I really felt lucky to be a part of it. I would say I ended up being in tech for 12 years, went from YouTube to Google after that, worked on the vaunted Google Plus social network, the most fantastic social network of all time, as we all know. Actually, it was a huge failure, but had some various chapters. But over that time, big tech, I think, got a little bit less about just the upside, and the downsides became clear. And part of why Mary and I, my wife, who also worked at Google, came to the Midwest is we felt like, well, I don't know if the Valley's getting this thing right. Like, it's the swagger of Silicon Valley, the kind of intense entrepreneurial energy that creates platforms like YouTube is really powerful. But the kind of purpose-driven sensibility you see in a startup marketplace like this one in Minnesota is a bit different. And so I think when it comes to tech, we're going to need to see more Minnesota tech ecosystems thrive than the Valley if we're going to get maybe more thoughtful technologies built. And we can talk more about that, but I think I'm grateful for my time in Silicon Valley, but also feel like I don't know if the future of tech is going to come from there.
So when you first left Silicon Valley, and I think it is also really an important part of your story that you had been a journalist, you worked in Boston, you did some YouTube journalism for YouTube, but really understanding the collection of facts, getting attribution, talking to sources, talking to multiple sources. But also when you came back, you ended up working in state government. I mean, is that something that you had ever imagined you would do?
I wondered about it at times, but didn't really see a clear path to it. One of the themes I write about in the book is reinvention, and everybody has their moments of reinvention. I mean, look at your podcast. This is a totally reinvented format for you. But when I was at YouTube, I was the person who came from media, and so I brought that kind of journalistic sensibility that YouTube didn't have. And so even though I didn't really know tech, I was kind of the journalism person. So there's a superpower when you bring one skill set to a new environment. And I think the same was true in government, or at least I hope it was. Coming from Google into state government was a different shift. Not many people do it. More should. It's incredibly powerful and meaningful as a life experience. But I was able to bring a little bit of that Google kind of mindset to how we run a government bureaucracy. Not that government should run like Google, but I think you bring a different pair of eyes when you come from one industry into another, and I enjoyed that. I found government to be really meaningful work. I mean, it was very local compared to kind of the global scale of Google. And then most of my time ended up being crisis management because of the pandemic and George Floyd's murder, and so the job ended up being very different from one that I signed up for. But I found that I really liked it, and the crisis moments gave us a chance to write our own playbook versus following a thick bureaucratic manual, which I found suited my own skill sets a little bit better. And it was an amazing 4 years, and feel lucky to have gotten to do it and got to learn my home state a lot better too through that process.
As we say on the show, not a matter of if but when, crisis will rock your world. And it rocked the entire world, and you were one of the guiding forces in the state of Minnesota. I also want to point out that I'm a big lover of the U.S. Constitution, and the framers of the Constitution really meant for regular citizens to go into government, to share their expertise, but then to leave. the career politician is not really what the framers had in mind. So thank you for your service. And then thank you for leaving and going back into the business world and taking some of those lessons and insights. All right, we've got to get to the book. How I Found Myself in the Midwest.
Yeah.
You're originally from the Midwest, from Minnesota. Your wife is not, but you came back to take this job. She left Google and, is in the venture world. And you wrote this book that we have right here, How I Found Myself in the Midwest. Beautiful cover. Your first book, what was that experience like? Because he is, if you haven't read it yet, Steve is very open and raw in this book.
Yeah. Well, it was an honor to get to do it. And I think you don't really know what you're signing up for until you start a project like this. And I wrote it because I thought I might have a story to tell. Its core, it's a boomerang story, which I think is true for a lot of Minnesotans. We leave and we come back. That's a pretty common thing. But then to leave tech and go into government and then to have experienced just by fate of the moments I addressed, all those moments of crisis and triumph and challenge and strife was a story that I felt like might come into a book. And so it was fun to get to do. I enjoyed writing it. It was very personal. I didn't begin starting to think it would be as much about me as it was, but Simon Schuster, my publisher, was interested in that part of it. And as I began to write, I'm like, well, if you're telling a story like this, the more open you can be about what you're facing and what you've faced, maybe the more value it can be. So yes, it gets into Minnesota and our history and our future, and it talks a lot about kind of the inner workings of being in state government and then my decision to come to the Strib and why. But yeah, it also gets into like moving to Minnesota in your 40s and trying to make friends as like a dude trying to like mandate and meet people, or even my relationship with
mandate.
Yeah,
we could do a whole episode on that in the future, Steve.
Yeah, I didn't ever think I'd write a chapter on mandating, but I ended up doing it. And it was kind of one of the funner things to write. But I also got into sort of Mary and I's journey with fertility and trying to build a family, and even my relationship with my parents coming back to Minnesota and kind of the faith journey that defined a lot of that for me. So I ended up opening up more than I had planned, but in the end, I think I'm proud of how those things kind of weave together, and hopefully the book will help more people because of that.
And it is true when you write a book like this, I am an author, but not of a memoir. When you're writing about your own life, it requires you to also like look at it from the outside as well as from the inside. What was that process? Because you also, I'm sure, wanted to make it interesting for the reader.
Right.
And how did you decide, well, this factoid, this past experience might be boring, or this one would be exciting? How did you judge? Or did you get help judging?
Well, I got help judging, and I had a great editor. Her name is Stephanie Frerick. She's actually from St. Cloud, Minnesota, but as a VP at Simon & Schuster, made it big in New York. In New York. So she knew Minnesota, but also was just an incredibly accomplished editor. And her best advice to me was this. She said, okay, I was kind of getting stuck. She said, you're writing too much connective tissue. I don't need to know how you got from the car to the building kind of thing. Like, she said, stop, put everything down. Just write me like the 7 to 8 most impactful, dramatic kind of scenes that you think can offer lessons to a reader first. We'll figure out how to connect them later. Just start there. Like, think of
good advice.
Yeah, think of your book like a movie and write like the best scenes first. Mm-hmm. And so, gosh, when I did that, it freed me from trying to stitch it all together and just write the big stuff. And then you start to structure it based on those lessons and insights and the themes. And that was a game changer for me because I was getting kind of stuck. It's like, not everything in your life is all that interesting, but you don't always know which things to pluck. So when you only focus on the big ones, that helped.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, you do get into the fertility journey. How was that for your wife, knowing, or however you came to the decision to actually share that?
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about it. And Mary has been open with others about the challenges we both faced on that front. And we're very lucky, by the way, to have 2 beautiful twins through IVF. But the book covers our attempts to have a 3rd child, which weren't ultimately fruitful, but taught us a lot. And, she was my first reader, editor, and viewer of all that work, and she felt good about putting that story out into the world. One of the things about being in a fertility journey that's just true for men and women is it's kind of a silent thing. Like, you don't talk about it that much. If it doesn't work out, nobody knows because it's such a quiet thing. And we found during our fertility journey that talking to others who'd experienced it was really powerful, and reading it from others who'd experienced it was powerful too. So it fit the storyline I was telling about finding hope in family and home, and think hopefully also can help others going on the same journey. And Mary felt the same way. But yeah, it was definitely a conversation. It is a book with my name on the cover, and it is my story, but so much of it is about Mary and me together and our relationship. And so was kind of a joint project for a lot of the chapters.
Well, and Mary Grove has been on the Crisis Files
I know.
in season 1, so she beat you by 3 seasons.
I know.
And is just a delightful woman and person. We will have her back on the show. Congratulations to both of you for the book.
Thanks.
I thought we'd wind down with something Steve has no idea I'm going to ask him about.
Yeah.
Let's do a bit of a fire round. I think you can
Okay.
handle it.
Let's
Former
fire round it
reporter,
up. Yeah.
Employee number 85 at YouTube, you can handle this. All right. If you could only recommend one book to someone who said to you, Steve, what book should I read? And let's take yours out of the game.
Okay.
What would that book be?
Oh, wow. Well, I am a voracious reader. It's hard to answer just one book.
Maybe give me a fiction and nonfiction.
Yeah. Well, I will say I read a lot of memoirs in this past year, and one recent memoir I read that I really liked a lot was called It's Only Drowning by a guy named David Litt. And he's a
Sounds
former
really
Obama,
uplifting.
Yeah, well, it actually is. It's about a guy who's a former Obama speechwriter and gets depressed during the pandemic and takes up surfing and starts surfing with his brother-in-law, who is sort of a Joe Rogan listening, right-wing, sort of apolitical-ish type of person.
So they're very opposite.
So very opposite politically, but they kind of find this common ground through surfing. And David is a great writer. He's very funny. He's the guy who wrote Obama's White House Correspondents' Dinner speeches and stuff like that.
Got it.
So he's funny. He's a good read. But he talks about finding common ground with people who aren't like you through other experiences. And he doesn't glamorize it, but it's just a good, fun beach read. I also read a book this summer that I just loved because it's just a great book, is Boys on the Boat. Became a major movie. I haven't seen the movie, but man, would that book just totally riveted me. I got a rower during the pandemic myself, and so kind of got into rowing as like a way to, let off steam at the end of long days of conference calls on the pandemic, and then just a few weeks ago finished Boys on the Boat.
And that was that the crew movie from the War II era?
It's about the Washington University crew team that won the Olympic gold medal in 1936 in Berlin. And it's just a fascinating story.
I saw the movie. My husband and I saw the movie.
Yeah,
we
so
loved
good.
it. But I need some new reads. Maybe I should go back in time and actually read the book.
Oh, you devour it.
Yeah,
it's good.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's get into social media. Your favorite personal use social media platform?
It used to be Twitter, and that is definitely not the case anymore. I barely use it at all. When I do, I just feel like, what's going on here? I would probably say Instagram, and I'm still figuring out how to use it because I don't know if it doesn't really replace Twitter for me, but I enjoy it. It's fun. I think it's well put together. LinkedIn is becoming more and more useful for professional things, so I use that a decent amount, obviously for recruiting and kind of to put the Star Tribune's work out there. But I'd say probably LinkedIn and Instagram.
Okay. Yeah. New York or LA?
New York. I lived there for about a year and a half in my, early 30s. I loved it.
Yeah, there's really nothing like it.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite cocktail or spirit or wine?
Oh, interesting. Well, I have gone NA this year, so I'm kind of in a new
Good for
zone.
you.
Yeah.
Any tips on that front?
I will just say this. Part of the reason I've been able to do it is there's so many great NA beverages out there. So The Athletic is a very common one. People drink a lot. Untitled Art is another one that I like. We're right around the corner from France 44, so it's always like a step away. But
that's dangerous.
It is dangerous.
That is a beer and wine and cheese shop in Minneapolis. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Steve Grove, so much luck to you as you recreate and transform and continue to grow the Minnesota Star Tribune. And hopefully what you're doing will also be a model for print publications, digital platforms around the country, because we do need the journalists. And I don't say that only because I'm a former journalist. We need them, we need to trust them, and they need to be without any kind of fear of repercussions and violence like is happening in many parts of the world to be able to do their work.
They do.
So thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you. His book, How I Found Myself in the Midwest, you can connect with Steve directly as well as find the book, stevegrove.com. This case file is powered by Spoke 612 Productions. Spoke 612 Productions takes your ideas and brings them to life. Linda, Sarah, and Matt are committed to excellence and inclusivity. As a WeBank certified women-owned production company, Spoke 612 inspires awareness and delivers impact through storytelling. When you put your project in their hands, Spoke 612 draws on their own talents and experience to ensure they tell the best possible version of your story. Visit their portfolio at spoke612.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at The Crisis Files. Visit thecrisisfiles.com for all 4 seasons of the show. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.